Scotty wants a podium place for last year.
Hey, vegan cyclist. So this podcast, RaceCast, is going to be just me. Everyone else in this race lives super far away from me, so I can't really get anyone in here right at the moment. And spoiler alert, I get a flat tire. This was during a time of just flats all day. I mean, just getting flats left and right. It was a bummer. I had several races. I came off the Madeira stage race, which there was 4 races, and I got 4 flats on 4 different tires and 4 different rims. 2 of them clinchers, 2 of them tubulars. Just, I mean, what? Right? That was just such a bummer. But so, okay, this is the Lodi Cyclefest. And my current team, the team I was on this year and the team that I probably will be again on next year, is called Michael David Winery. And they put this race on, right? So it's kind of right by one of their big wineries. They do this big thing in Lodi. And this is a fast race. There's some big dogs that come out here. I'm at the very front of this race because since I'm on the team, I got a call up. And a call-up is basically when special people in a race get called up to the front of the race and they introduce them and talk about their accolades and that sort of thing. So, so embarrassing to get a call-up, right? Because you're getting put in front of just guys that are super, super strong. So I've got a good maybe 50 guys behind me. And then so everyone's looking like, why, what, like, who are they? Why are they special to get a call up? This race started off redonkulously fast. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the race. I'm going to talk about my team. I'm going to talk about the power and talk about flats too. I'm going to talk about, dealing with that sort of like unluckiness. So again, this is the Lodi Cyclefest. This is a race that I had to volunteer for. I was at this race at 5 a.m. To help set up the barriers and help do all this stuff because my team, they pay for my races, they pay for my kits, and over a long period, over a year, that equates to a lot of money. It's like big bucks. So they require that twice a year you volunteer. Like, there's no excuses. Like, you have to come and volunteer at the Lodi Cyclefest. You have to volunteer at this wine tour thing. So I had been here all day helping out. I also made a video of the entire day. You can check that out. It's called the Lodi Cyclefest. Link it somewhere around here. I'll link it in the description. But it's kind of just the overview of all categories. Masters, small categories like Cat 4, Cat 3, the women's. I kind of just did a little synapse of the whole thing. But so let's talk about some of the numbers here. Whole race numbers are a little bit different than to my flat numbers because to my flat, which was 3 laps to go, I was doing 27 miles an hour average for about an hour. And that's 43.4 kilometers per hour. Super fast. Super fast for how many times you slow down and speed up and slow down and speed up and slow down and speed up, right? But the whole race, 25.8. But that doesn't really... That's not fair, right? Because I was in with all these guys, I was crushing it, and I got a flat, and then so I was just sitting there for a whole lap, and then anyway, you'll see at the end. But my max power, 1,088 watts. Average power is 272 watts for the whole race. That's including me getting a flat. So what is that? That's 263, I think. So it was actually more watts after the flat. I average more watts after the flat. That's weird. But so peak power. Let's talk a little bit about like my power deal. My peak 2 seconds was 1,048. 5 seconds 954. 10 seconds 735. 20 seconds 574. My peak 1 minute 437. 2 minute was 398. 5 minute 339. And so I saw a comment on one of my videos. I think it was the cycling group breakdowns. And the guy was kind of being a D-hole, and he was just like, max power of 1,000, that's nothing to write home about. That's horrible power. And honestly, that guy's like max 1,088. That's not a great max power. But you gotta think about, like, when you're comparing power numbers, you have to also take into account like weight. So someone that is 50 pounds more than me is definitely going to be able, like, their power profile is totally different. You know, there are Cat 5s that can put out 1,500 watts on the bike, but if they're 220 pounds, you know what I mean? It's just not really efficient use of that power. And then when you think about that, you're basically just redlined for an hour, hitting just 1,000 watts almost every turn, you know, or close to it, just constantly snapping. You know, your max power effort is not going to be your max race effort. I think that it'd be very rare to possibly get the best max power you've ever hit during a race, just because it's not, I mean, you're usually, when you're going to be going all out towards the end of a race, you're really fatigued. You got a lot of burn in your legs. And so my max ever power is 1485. That's the best power I've ever hit. But that was just like on a training ride. That was me noodling around and specifically trying to hit a max power. And so, you know, yeah, I'm super fresh. And then when you get out here into the race, and after just all these surges into your legs, like, dude, just hitting anything over 1,000 watts is difficult. But that's what separates the men from the boys. I mean, some of these guys, you know, you can have your power profile in the first 5 minutes of a race versus like one of the top pros, and you might not be that big of a difference. The big difference and the big separation comes from the guys that can still put out unbelievable power at the end of an hour to 3 hour race, right? The Training Peaks put up the world champion was 2 years ago. So whoever was before Peter Sagan, that guy, they showed his whole power profile. And in the last 10 minutes or something like that, he, you know, or maybe it wasn't even 5 minutes, he had put out, you know, 500 watts for 5 minutes or something of that sort, something like real decent. But most people said, dude, I could do that. Like, that's not that crazy. That's not that crazy of power. Like, yeah, that's difficult. But the whole thing was that was like 4 hours or 5 hours into the race after, you know, he had averaged like some crazy 300 watts for 4 hours, or you know what I mean? So understanding your power, your power profile, you kind of have to put it into context. So there's that. This course has like kind of cobblestones. You can see that I'm like riding over that, and that's kind of weird when you're going from one like texture to another texture, or you're turning on cobblestones. Man, having confidence in your wheels is super important. And when we race, this is kind of something to talk about. When we race, we often are pushing our bike to its limits, and if we've never really practiced those limits outside of racing, man, that can be kind of dangerous, right? If you don't know what your limits are, then it's a little bit difficult to know how much you can lean over, or you either you'd go over your limits and you wreck, or two, you're nowhere near your limits, and so you're leaving a lot of watts on the table, right? Like, because if you can take a turn fast and smooth and you don't have to pedal and you can be more efficient, I mean, dude, you can cut so many watts off of what you have to do. So going into a parking lot where there's no one around and practice leaning your bike over, practice, finding your limits. For a second, look how crazy strung out this race is. Crazy strung out. I mean, we're almost like from the back of the pack to the front of the pack is maybe 30 seconds, which is just insane, right? I mean, it's just so strung out. And I've talked about this before, that for the most part in Northern California racing, it is basically full gas until a breakaway establishes. And then at that point, most of the time in Pro 1-2 fields, like big fields, the breakaway will end up lapping the field, because it's just the way the makeup is. And I'll maybe talk about that a little bit later. But look, there's nothing cooler than this. Like looking up ahead and just seeing all these guys strung out, just going so fast. And again, so being in the back of the pack here is a risk, because if there's a separation way up front, say there's a guy that his fitness is just not good, or he gets a flat tire, he makes a mistake, and he's like in the middle of that strung out field, he could cause a gap. And at 30 miles an hour, coming around that gap is difficult to do. And so you could end up getting this separation, and then I could get popped off the back, not because my fitness isn't there, just because of positioning, which is no good. So, again, people, they'll comment on some of the videos like you should just hang out in the back and wait for the finish. And I guess, I mean, that is an angle, and sometimes that would work out. But a lot of times, if you're just sitting in the back, things can happen in the race that will take away your race, that are outside of your control. So trying to be into like the front third is the way to go, but man, that's so much easier said than done. Holding position and fighting for position is almost a sport in and of itself. You having to know where you want to be and how to get there, it's a skill, because you can't move up when guys are pinned. If it's accelerating, you're holding your position or not losing position. It's, looking for the times where it mushrooms up or slows down, and you can carry your momentum. You can, grab a position or two. That's the way to do it. But so yeah, back to learning your limits. Learning your limits fitness-wise is always a way to go. And getting a power meter is such a way to quantify what your limits are. If you have a power meter and you've used it for about a year, then you have a really clear picture of what you can and can't do. I mean, that's just how it is. You know that you've never done 300 watts for an hour before, right? And so when you're in a race and you're at 310 watts for the first 10 minutes, you obviously know, like, okay, something's going to have to change. Like, if this pace continues, I'm not going to be able to make it, because I'm not all of a sudden going to make some outrageous PR during a race. And so, that would be a time to not go off the front, because, you're on your red. You're redlined. There's no way you're going to be able to sustain that sort of pace, especially like if you went off solo or something. But knowing your limits power-wise is fantastic, but also knowing your bike handling limits. I mean, how far can you lean over your bike? How far can you lean over your bike and still pedal? That's a common wreck, is when guys lean over big time, start to pedal in the turn, and then clip their pedal, like do a pedal strike, and then get flicked like high-sided. So it's kind of embarrassing sometimes to go out by yourself and like ride around a parking lot, but it's more embarrassing to be out during a race, like your first race, and have no clue you know what you're doing. So I've definitely gone out. I found like a little circle around this church, and I just kind of lean my bike over a little bit more than I would, and feel how my tires roll, feel where I can pedal. You know, it's just that experience, learning your limits. And so then when you get into a race, you can push those limits a little bit more comfortably, and ultimately that's going to make your race way more efficient. Some of the guys that are extremely good, man, they cook those turns. They just rail them. They're just like pinned. They take like really wide lines. It's super efficient. They like never hit their brakes, you know, and so they're always like keep that momentum. So just a thought to like learn where your bike handling skills or limits are. You know, in this race, like you can see how close I'm getting to the curbs, and how close I'm getting to the cones. And so there's a thing called like target fixation, where you might stare at something, like you don't want to hit a tree, okay? But you're looking at the tree and you're like, don't hit this tree. Don't hit this tree. Don't hit this tree. Don't hit this tree. And then you're just staring at the tree, and then you're hitting the tree, right? You're running right into it. And so just for a second, you can kind of see what you just saw right up there is there's starting to be like a separation. There's starting to be a breakaway forming up in the front. But then we have so many guys that are so willing to chase right now that the pace is just picking up pretty hard. And you got guys blowing their wad to try to close down that gap. But so when like the target fixation thing is that you don't necessarily want to look at those trees, and they're intimidating, man. You don't want to look at the curb. You know, sometimes you can just kind of glance over at the curb and go, man, that would totally suck if I ran into that curb. But you can't do that. You kind of just have to focus on what you're doing. Like right here, I mean, I'm getting within inches of that curb. But if I'm not looking at it and I'm just kind of paying attention to where I'm going, you know, you'll be fine. So when you're, again, comes to practice. If you can find like a little empty parking lot, or like a place that you can kind of roll out your turns a little more efficiently towards the edge and get practice on just focusing on your line. And also in racing, like holding your line is a big thing. So many guys will yell at you like, hold your line. You know, because there's an apex to a turn, right? There's a whole science to turning and how you come in and how you angle it. And some guys will get a little sketchy and they'll pop out of that apex. And when you're racing super close to everyone, you have to trust them. I have to trust these guys are going to turn, because if they don't turn, I'm going to run into them. And if they make a mistake and they flick up and I'm on the outside of them, they're going to run into me. So like try to hold your line, focus on what you're doing, and and it's so hard to do, but it's sort of ignore everything else. Get that tunnel vision of like, don't look out off the course. Don't worry about the guys right next to you, because it's just gonna wig you out big time. So let's talk about, and I've talked about this a million times, but let's talk about breakaway tactics, because it's always kind of fascinating. And how this race is playing out is that there is 3 main teams here, 3, maybe 4 main big teams. So A main, which is the one right in front of me with like the striped kits, Mike's Bikes, Stork, right? Or Stork Echelon, and H24, Strava, something. Those 4 teams, one of them is going to win, right? I mean, they have the most firepower. They got the strongest guys. I mean, I'm not here to not win, but it's one of the things that it's like, for me to win, I'd have to be extremely strong, and just be able to outplay a ton of those teams. But so right now, basically everyone's pinned, and those teams are kind of taking turns trying to set up a breakaway. And when a breakaway establishes, and they'll look at that makeup and they'll say, even if they get, say, all 4 of those guys in the breakaway, they might say, well, our guy is not a sprinter and there's a known sprinter in that breakaway, so we're going to pull back that breakaway. Even though it has our team in it, we don't like that makeup. And so these little breakaways get going, and then they get brought back, and then they go off again, and they get brought back. And they just kind of trying to find that perfect makeup. Guys will go with these bigger teams on a smaller team like myself. I'm trying to find that breakaway, but they might not want to work with me because I don't really have a big team behind me to slow down the group, or to kind of block for me. And then since their teams are so dominant, I might not necessarily have to work as hard. Like, they are going to be the ones that are going to work hard. So they don't want to leech. They want guys they know. They don't really necessarily know me that well, right? Like, I'm not like some known awesome dude. So these makeups of the breaks are so intricate, and you get in there and like, you might not know anybody, but they all do, right? They all know each other, and they're going, okay, they're like, I think I could get this, or the teams letting those breakaways go because they know they're doomed from the start, right? They know that the makeup isn't strong enough to pull all the way to the finish. And so that's kind of crazy, right? It's so knowing who's around you, knowing what teams are in the group, and knowing who's going off the front, knowing so like Cortex, the blue and white, my coach Tony's on there. They have they have 2 really good sprinters, and so they're not they're kind of just hanging back. They're more looking forward to the finish of the race, and towards the finish of the race, using all their matches to stay to the front of the race than work trying to get a break. And I'm hanging out in the back for a little while because how fast this race is. Last year when I did this, I got into a break for a lap. It was just insane. I got into a break for a lap, and then it put me so in the red that I got flicked. This race, I was feeling phenomenal. I think I was peaking because this race did not feel hard to me. It didn't feel like really that big of an issue to respond to all these attacks. So it's such a bummer I got a flat. Not that I would have been able to win or anything, but I definitely think I probably could have got in the top 10, maybe, right? But so what else video should we talk about? So a thing that is common, that people maybe a common misconception, is that you should just, it's easy to win a race. You just hang out in the back towards the end of the race, you save all your matches, and then go really hard at the end. And if you've never been in a Pro 1-2 race, then it's easy to think that that's possible, because you watch it on Tour de France, right? You watch on pro stages where it looks like guys are just sitting on wheels, not really going that hard, and then they just come around everyone and sprint for the win. Yay. But the pace gets so fast that just staying on a wheel, you're having to put out an amount, you're having to put out so much power and so much wattage that it's not really like you can just come around. When you're doing 600 watts on someone's wheel, that acceleration kind of negates the draft. You're in their wheel, you are drafting, cool. But if you're doing 600 watts on their wheel, now when you come out into the wind, you're going to have to do 800 watts, 900 watts, 1,000, 1,500 watts, whatever, to come out into the wind and then pass them. And if you've been doing that for laps, in the last couple laps of these races, especially the last lap, it's 35 mile an hour lap. So it's not like you're just hanging out on the back, no worries, no big deal. it's gruesome, man. It's so fast. It's so fast. So it's not a factor of just hanging out and saving your matches. I mean, definitely you want to save like energy, but that's such a weird. It's a weird way to say, well, you want to save energy. Yeah, I mean, you want to save energy, but you're still putting out a ton of watts. You're still hammering, 300, 400 watts for the most part, and then I kind of feel like my power meter's messing up a little bit. I don't know if you see that. It didn't look like it was messing up when I put this together, but like obviously I'm not doing 18 watts right there. So it sort of seems, I don't know if it's off or it's messing up. My power meter messed up for a while. My stages, I mean, they're cheap, so maybe that's a thing, but I've had a lot of issues with that power meter. So anyway, hanging out on the back of someone's wheel during the last lap where like the whole thing is just constant acceleration. Yeah, dude, this power is like totally off for whatever reason. That can't be right. Like, let's see if I go into this turn. Yeah, that looked okay. I'm like surging. Like, I'm definitely not 0 watts right now. Maybe I am. Anyway, shit. Getting sidetracked. So let's talk about teams. Could definitely do that. My team is Michael David Winery, and so they are a more of a club type of a team. So basically they have an elite race team, but that's not their focus. Their focus is having like 200 club members, right? Their focus is more social, and then on top of that they have their race squad. I don't really have any Cat 1s or 2s on the team. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 that are going to be in 2017. So I don't really have that many people that are going to be racing with me. Even though they have racers, they don't race that often, and they race in lower categories, which isn't going to do me any good. I'm not going to have any teammates. They also live super far from me, so I don't get to train with them, and that's a big deal. When you are able to train and ride constantly with the guys that you race with, you kind of have this camaraderie. You sort of know their strengths and their weaknesses. It's a big deal. So being on a team in an area near you, I think is a huge plus. I just don't have any teams near me. I'm in Bass Lake, and then the nearest town is Fresno, which is like an hour away, and they don't really have any hardcore race teams. But so Mike's Bikes is probably one of the biggest or most strongest teams. They're the blue and yellow, like dark blue, light blue, yellow. So they're probably one of the strongest in the area. They do a lot of traveling. They've won a couple national championships. They have like development programs. So the guy in front of me, I believe, is on their like development squad. So he's not on the full Mike Spikes roster. He's like in there coming up through the ranks type roster. But I know, so their full team, you get a bike, you get races paid for, you get kits, and then I think you get a helmet and shoes. I mean, they pretty much deck you out and everything. I don't think you get wheels, because I don't see like a consistency of wheels. But so most big teams, when you get on, you're either going to get a really good deal on a bike, or you're going to get a full bike. You're going to get kits. You're probably going to get helmets. You might have to pay like a small bit for the helmet. You might get shoes. So like Specialized Muscle Milk or whatever that one is, you get, I think, like half off on a bike. But you have to have a Specialized. You have to have a Specialized bike to race on their team. Another team is Cliff. The Cliff Bar team is, man, they travel all over the place. They definitely have some strong riders on their squad. Cliff Bar sponsoring that team, obviously. They do Aragon bikes, I believe. So you get a bike, you get wheels. Kind of cool. And then, but you got to be able to put out good results, man. So when they are investing, when a team is investing, say, how much money? Like maybe possibly $5,000 a year into a rider. When you talk about races being paid for, if you do 30 races in the year, 40 races in the year, some guys do 70 races in the year. Yeah, that adds up super quick. So you're looking at like, shit, $3,000 a year in just racing. Some of the teams will pay for travel or part of travel. So then you talk about maybe another $1,000 in travel. So there's $4,000. And then if they're giving you a bike and kits, that can easily be another $2,000. So, my team probably invests into me close to about $2,000 for the year. Some of the bigger teams invest way more than that. So that's where it's like hard you can't just get on a team. People are like, just get on a better team or get on a really good team with a lot of guys. Those teams have limited spots because they offer so much. And there are other teams that you can get on without them. They don't give you anything. Some teams you have to pay to be on. It's like dues, right? Like more kind of a club type thing. And then you get discounts on stuff. Dude, look how it's so strung out right now. And it's like all split up. The gaps are opening up everywhere. Because we're 14 miles into this race. And it is, what are we like? We're 31 minutes or so into this. So guys are starting to get tired, man. Guys are getting tired. And if guys have been on the front, that's one thing about guys. So hanging out here in the back, guys have been on the front attacking, going off on breakaways, making the moves. And then when they blow up, they sort of fall through the pack and then can cause all those splits. And so by the time that guy in the front blows up and comes through the pack, by the time he gets back to me, man, the gaps could be pretty substantial. But nothing really like that happened. And I got into a breakaway in this race, I think right towards the end. Which, holy smokes, it felt like that was the move, right? We got, I want to say maybe 13 guys in the break. It was a huge break. And we had all the teams represented. And actually, all my team. So I have two teammates here with me, Dustin and Sean. And we were actually all in that break. So we were working well together. We were all working. I don't know who brought it back. Mike's Bikes, I think, brought it back. But they had two guys in that break. But again, like I was talking about the makeup breaks, for whatever reason, they just decided that's too many guys. A breakaway of 13 is like, we probably have a better chance to win if we bring it back. Which sucks because I was in it and I worked really hard to get in it. But in this race, I was trying to be patient and I waited till the very, tail end of the race to like move up to the front, and you'll see that I do a pretty good job of moving up to the front, going with moves, getting into a break, and then it got brought back, and I was still feeling great. Like I was feeling, for how, again, being at this place at 5 in the morning and working all day. See that gap that opened up? Asshole. For being here all day and working and helping and volunteering and like making a video of the whole day, I'm surprised at how well I rode. Because I don't think I ate really anything all day. I had like a banana and a bunch of coffee. So that's another thing to talk about. People ask, what do you eat during a race? And dude, in a crit, 1 hour crit, 75-minute crit, nothing. I don't eat anything. to break down the times really quick, so you go Cat 5 is beginner or D grade and like elsewhere outside of the States. Usually like a Cat 5 crit is going to be 30 minutes to 40 minutes long. As you go higher up in the categories, your crit time goes longer, because a crit is not based on miles, it's just strictly based on time. So if we rode around at 1 mile an hour for an hour, we might do, one lap, like one mile, and that would be the race. So it's not based on miles, it's based on time. In road racing, the categories like Cat 5 might do 40 miles, Cat 4 and 3 might do 60, pros might do 80 to 100. But so this race was 75 minutes long, and all the other races, so like the Cat 5 was 35 minutes, Cat 4 I think was 40 minutes. Some of the Masters racing was like 50 minutes to an hour. I think the Cat 3 race was an hour. This one's 75 minutes. So when you go from Cat 3 to 2, again, like I've talked about, then you're racing with Pro 1-2s. So not only is the pace way faster and way harder, but then you have to do it for another 15 minutes, right? So that's hard. But so yeah, I don't eat anything. It's way too aggressive and intense for me to worry about like trying to stuff some vegan poppy seed muffin in my face. Guys will use goos and blocks and stuff like that. I hate goos, and I just don't want to mess with it. I honestly just don't want to worry about when I should be eating, because I'm like obviously no scientist, but from what I understand is that you have a certain, like in an hour you're going to use up like your sugar stores, your glycogen stores. Do you see me moving up to the front right now? What? I saw the A-main guy and everyone kind of slowed down, and I just kept my momentum. And so like I'll get back to the food in a second, but let's talk about that, because that was awesome. To be able to move up and then watch this guy's gonna drop me off because he has a teammate, so he's like, no, I'm not pulling. Like, shit. So I had to cover that. I should have just went around him instantly. But so I was at the very back, and if it's strung out, moving from the back to the front would be probably impossible, because there's no way, like, you by the time you got to the front, you'd be toast. But so everyone, for just a slight second, that was one of the only times in this whole race that it mushroomed up. And since I was on the back, it mushroomed up, it slowed down, the A-main guy started to roll forward, so I had someone's wheel to be on, and I just used my momentum to pull me to the front of the race. And now we're going to start working together. I go on a little attack, and this is, we're a good ways into the race, so I really feel like this is a time that we can make something work. And we ended up getting a good group of guys to go with us. The teams, like the teams were great, and man, this was good stuff. I don't feel like that's my power though. Anyway, so I flick off and I'm watching. So I think we had like 3 guys here. We might have gotten brought back, and then we did went off again. But moving up to the front, man, I don't know. Watch that again, because that was like perfect. I don't do a lot of things right, but moving up around all those guys and using no energy to go from the back to the front, that was awesome. So the guy in the blue, his team is really, really strong. But you can see he's just shutting it down. He's like, nah, it's not going to work. They're chasing us. Because you can look back when you get a little gap. So we had a little breakaway of 3 right there. Me, him, and that other dude. But for one, Cliff Bar still in the pack. Cortex still in the pack. Mike's bike still in the pack. So if we don't have Mike's bikes with us, it's not going to work. And so again, that's knowing your audience, right? Like, we're not going to destroy ourselves to try to make a break work when we know for a fact Mike's bikes will destroy themselves to bring us back, because they're not in it. But I'm trying to stay to the front now because I don't want to lose all my position. that I gained from that awesome move of swinging up the left. So I'm gonna use some energy to stay to the front and try to monitor attacks and go with a move, because there's gonna be a move that goes pretty soon, and I want to be in it. See, there's a Mike Spikes guy. That guy right there, the blue, yellow, white. We need him or one of his teammates in a break for there to be any chance for it to work. You have to have the right makeup. So if we had like a Cortex and a Cliff and a Mike's and an Echelon and a main, bruh, they're done, right? A good amount of time, you have the right makeup, guys work together, small break. Their teams are so big that no one's going to pull from the break or from the group, and then you're set. And then what will end up happening is the group goes so slow that the pack off the front laps the field. And when you lap a field, what ends up happening is that then everyone's on the same lap, but the people who lapped the field, like now they're racing for the win, but they don't have to win that pack sprint, so if one guy lapped the field, he could just sit on the back of the group, and as it comes through the finish, he could be dead last in the pack, but he won because he's a lap up. And so then what kind of gets weird is when like 3 or 4 or 5 guys lap the field, they try to go to the front of the pack and then keep their race, because it's weird, right? Because now they're racing each other, but all the other people are racing for like, minor placing. But then they have teammates, which is kind of weird, because if you lap the field, then your teammate can like help lead you out against the other guys. But so you can start seeing that people are starting to get antsy. And at the front of the race is so much harder than the back of the race sometimes, because you're having to surge with these attacks that often don't go anywhere. So it's like a big surge and then slow down, big surge, slow down. When you're at the back of the pack, you sometimes don't feel that. You don't feel that surge at the front. But other times, the back is way worse, because that surge actually becomes an accordion effect, and you don't feel like you're on the back, and you don't respond to the move up front. So by the time it gets back to you, you have to go from 20 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour, just to, because that accordion. So back to food. Don't eat for an hour, because your body has like stores for an hour for sure. 75 minutes. Maybe a goo, but again, I eat before the race, like not right before the race, but I try to not be hungry, but I also try to be light. I have like cranked naturals in my bottle, so that's sort of like a Whole Foods powder, some sugar. I saw a study that showed, look at that guy filming off to the side. It's funny. I saw a study that showed that sugar just hitting your tongue actually releases stores of energy. Like your body will go deeper and harder just by tasting sugar, because it feels like it's going to start getting that like more energy, more fuel. If it doesn't feel like it's getting fuel, it starts to shut down what energy you can actually use, which is nuts, right? So you say you have 20% left in your gas tank, but if your body's not bringing in sugar, it might hold that 20% as reserve and not give it to you anymore. Not giving it. You have it, but it's not giving it to you. And so if you just put sugar on your tongue, then your body's like, okay, I'll release this last 20%, because we're going to be getting more of that in. Do you see? I'm like standing, rocking, sprinting, because I know that a move is gonna flick off. There's strong guys on the front. Guys are getting tired, and that's a good makeup right there for sure. But so anything over an hour and a half, I'm definitely gonna eat on the bike. But 2 bottles, unless it's really cold, maybe 1 bottle, but for the most part, 2 bottles. In a crit, you can't, there is no feed zone in a crit. And so I've been in a crit before where it was like 105, and I just ran through my 2 bottles. Do you see that Stork, that blue guy, came in that turn and let this gap open up because he has a teammate in the break. I'm like beating that to death. But so that guy, opened up that gap, and then I kind of surged. But then it's like, dude, there's so many guys behind us. And so I didn't close that gap because I know other guys were going to close that gap for me because I don't want to waste my energy. But I want to say this might be the break right now, which was, like I said, it was huge. It was like 13 guys. Look at this. Drilling it. So guys will flick to the right side of the road from the back and just pin it up the side so that you have to go out of your way to get onto their wheel. And that's kind of a tactic. It's a dangerous tactic, though, because they weren't looking behind them when they flicked off to the right. They just jammed off to the right. And if I had been coming up to the right, we would have wrecked for sure. But you see guys that will flick off, they'll spring off of the group, go way far away, so that you're not able to easily get on their wheel and get the draft. But again, man, don't do that as a Cat 5 or don't do that as a Cat 4, just because it's so easy to like wipe someone's wheel out doing that. These guys do that because they are really confident about the pace and these guys are really good. So yeah, don't flick out like that if you're just beginning. It's an advanced technique for sure. It's kind of scary though, because sometimes guys will take you straight in the gutter and you're like riding in the gutter, right on the curb, pinned. So we did food and a little bit about teams, how they give you a bunch of stuff depending on what team you're on. Sometimes you have to pay to be on teams. Just depends on how good you are. Recruitment is a thing once you start getting good. If you've won a couple races. So do you see it? Like, see how they're far to the left? They went way to the left. Here's me trying to drink some water. They went way, way, way to the left. And again, like I said, they're trying to do that to create separation. And you've got the blue team, the all blue team, echelon. You've got A main, the stripes, Mike Spikes, blue, yellow, and then H24. I can't remember their full name. They have like 3 sponsors. H24, the black and green. And those guys are just constantly going because, like I said, they know one of those dudes is going to win. One of those 4 teams, for sure, going to win. And so they're trying to make that separation, trying to make that break, and they're just so freaking strong. They're so freaking strong. And most of those guys, for me anyway, they're out from the Bay Area. They train and ride in the same area. So they have like this huge talent pool that they're able to source from. I think that right here in front of me is Mustache Man. That's Jonathan Baker. And he'd already raced. I want to say he's already raced twice. I think he's already raced twice. He got second in one race, and then I can't remember what he did the second his other race. But you can watch it on the Lodi Cyclefest. I do a little interview with him at the end. So that guy's it's like his 3rd race. It's so crazy. Super fast. Little bit of a slowdown, and then you can see there's a move up the road. But when guys, you can see they're kind of spread across like the road, because when a group gets too big, sometimes it's they don't work together because it's just too many guys. So people sit on the back, and I made the surge and went with A main. And so this may be the break. I'm sorry. It's so hard to like I don't want to sit here for an hour and rewatch the race and like plot where things happen. And I feel like I remember what happened in the race, but then I rewatch it, and I'm like, oh, this is totally different than what I thought. So you can see that group of guys. This is where I hit my max power. I just hit my max power right now in the race to try to cover this group. But so there was a group of guys. They had teammates further up the road, and so they're opening up that separation. They don't have to pedal. They don't have to do anything because they have teammates up the road. So my job now is to cover this. And that guy did a really good job of pulling, but there was guys on my wheel, and one of them is my teammate. And so we're trying to close down the gap, and we do. And we close down this gap, and so this is legitimately where like the big 13-man breakaway gets established. And we had a good gap for a little while. I want to say maybe it lasted 4 laps, 5 laps, which doesn't, it's obviously not like a crazy amount, but making this bridge to a breakaway is hard sometimes, especially if you don't have anyone to work with, because the breakaways should be going flat out, pinned, redlined, right? So getting there is just like is a chore. If you have guys that will work with you, that's awesome. Right when you get to them, you want to try to start playing the game. You want to move through. You want to take pull. You want to play, right? Because if they think that you just got on and you're going to sit on, maybe they won't work. And already we have so many guys here that it's like, ugh, this is probably too many guys. Everyone's not going to go hard enough for it to work. But then also on the opposite end is, dude, we have so many guys, right? So we should be able to make this work. We should be able to make the breakaway. And so I'm kind of inside thinking like, whoa, this is awesome. Sort of counting my chips of like counting the guys who I think I could beat in the sprint, or, you know, can I get top 10 out of this? And I hate when I do that, because you're like, you know, I got this in the bag. It's cool. And then it comes back and you're all devastated. What else? Standing, sitting, that's a thing I do a lot. I try to alternate sitting and standing during a race. There are times where I'm like blowing up heart rate wise sitting, and so then I'll like make it harder gear and stand up, and try to, like, I don't know, just shift around how I'm using my muscles, shift around the utilization of energy, because there are so many times, like during a race like this, it is even the guy who wins. No one gets done with the race and goes, that was easy. Right? Almost everyone at one point is feeling like, I'm about to get dropped. I'm about to blow up. And so being able to, you know, manage that and shift around that energy. Because if you're right on the red, you might just need one little bit of like just shifting and standing and shifting your energy to your heart or to your legs or whatever it may be, or just not pedaling for just a split second, could be the difference between you popping and not popping. These guys were so fast, and I think when I go to take my pull, it was like super weak. I don't know what we're about to see here. What I'm going to use the excuse that my power's off if it's weak. But I felt good. So, 400 watts, about that. It's dropping. So I'm looking around. Guys are. So now I'm falling back. I took a weak pull, dude. I suck. So I funnel to the back because there's a lot of guys. I'm looking back. We've got a good group. So again, you can see there's 2 Cortex, there's 2 A main, there's 2 Echelon, there's a Mike Spikes, there's 3 Michael David. So maybe that's why Mike Spikes brought it back. I guess that would make sense. if Mike Spikes only has one guy in the group and everyone else has teams, you know, that's a bummer, dude. Ugh. If Mike Spikes had one more guy in there, this would have been the move, man. This would have been the move for at least getting in the top 10. That'd have been cool. So we're 24 miles in out of a 26-mile race, and we're 55 minutes in. You see, so the guys that are holding the flags up in the corners, those are volunteers. What the hell happened here? Why are they not? So I have to make a bridge here. I don't know if that Mike Spikes guy just decided that that's not the move he wants to be in. He's going to go back and help his team bring us back. But why did those guys fall off? That's not good. And then this guy's smoked and toast. Oh my goodness. So we had an awesome breakaway going, and everyone blew up off the back. Crazy race. It's crazy to rewatch. There's Jonathan Baker. Did we have Jonathan Baker, Mustache Man, in this break? Crazy. So I think we might have just now got brought back, because I'm falling back to the back. And yeah, I think that's what happened. So I'm like, dude, if we got brought back and we had a good group of guys, I'm going to kind of conserve my energy. You know, I'm redlined. I've been redlining, sticking with that. And it's not, again, it's just you have to be on the front sometimes to go with those big moves. And to be on the front, you have to put out a lot of energy. So guys will be like, why do you go with so many moves? Well, tell me which one's the winning move. No one knows what the winning move is. Everyone's like, oh, I should have went with the winning move. Yeah, okay. When is that? There's a lot of moves. In a given race, you might have 20 or 30 moves. Which one of them is the winning one? I mean, you could maybe say, statistically, it won't be the first few. But if they're, how do you know? So at a certain point, you got to get up to the front, and you got to start going with moves and seeing what happens. And it's not necessarily, I guess my big problem has been putting out so much energy to get in a move, and then that move is doomed, but I put out so much energy to keep it alive. And that's what you probably have to kind of come to the realization of, okay, this move's not going to work. It's not made up right. And the biggest pros, the best guys, so frustrating, dude. You'll get into a break with them, they go eye-splitting pace, and then they just sit up. And you're like, what the hell? We have a gap. And they're like, nah, it's not going to work. I don't want to do it. It's just not the right makeup. And so it gets a little frustrating. But so those guys on the corner, they're holding flags. That's what I did for a little bit of this day. Volunteering. You hold a flag. You hold a flag up so that people know that the race is coming. Because in a crit like this, spectators will just walk across the road. And there's been horrific accidents where, Susie Smith is just typing on her phone and walks across the street, and then people plow into her. She gets plowed. And so those flags, you hold them up, let people know what's going on, and it's like a volunteer thing. These type of races, get into the business of a race a little bit, that might be interesting, is on average you're going to get about $40 a racer. Some races cost $30, some $50 a race. Most guys will race two or three races. So on average, you might get about $50 a racer, $40 a racer if you're saying more people are signing up for other races. Second races are usually cheaper. So it might go $35 for your first race, $10 for your second, $10 for your third, that sort of thing. So the promoter of this one has to close down these streets, which, dude, it's so expensive. It's so expensive to close down streets. You have to hire police officers, and there's like permits and stuff. I've been at races where it cost $2,500 to close down a street. It's like, what? That's $2,500 to close down a street. So I think I'm gonna get a flat right now. I think I'm getting a flat. My tire, I can feel it, and then I kind of bounce my back wheel against the ground. It's just like, dude, are you serious? I was feeling so good. So I have a flat, and we'll get back to the business of it just in a second. But so here's what happens. You get to go into the pit anytime and get another wheel and get back in the race. So you get like a free lap. I get to get a wheel, get back into the race, like as if I never got out of the race. That only applies to the last... That does not apply to the last 5 laps. Okay? There's only 3 laps to go. So I missed it by 1 lap, actually, I think. Or whatever. 1 or 2 laps. So I'm smoked. If I get back in the race, it doesn't matter. I am now a lap down. Because of the way that the pit works. And I don't even have a wheel. I did not bring a wheel into the pit. So I'm just like, my race is over. I'm so pissed. Like, are you kidding me that I got a flat? And so someone said, no, I have a wheel for you. I have a wheel for you. So they threw on someone else's wheel, just like a stock wheel. And then I was able to get back in the race. But again, they said, dude, you're not, you can get back in the race, but you're a lap down. So I'm either, if I just stop now, I'm going to get a DNF. Did not finish. And I did not want that. So I'm going to get back in the race. And I'm going to finish the race. But this part of the straight, like, dudes are going 30 miles an hour down here. And I'm dead stopped. And they don't let you go until pretty much everyone has gone by. So it's like, really? Are you serious? So I'm going to have to go from 0 to 100. And then it's the last, I think this is, it says like 3 to go, right? So it's, I'm going to, here they come. Here's everyone coming. Look how fast they're going. Then they go, okay, yeah, you can go. Cool. Like, and then it was so dangerous that they let me go right at that spot because everyone had to weave out. It was a nightmare. But so now I'm on the very back, and I'm going 20 miles an hour. They're going 30, and so now I have to get back onto the back of them with a wheel that's not shifting right. And then you can see that this is the last 3 laps of the race. So it's just absolutely pinned. And by the time I get to the back of the pack is already blown apart. Not my fault. So shitty. I had great fitness, and it's such a bummer to like show you guys races, and it's like, dude, the VC's always not doing good. But I didn't get dropped. I got a flat. And then what am I supposed to do? Get back onto this group right here? It's like, they're done. They're getting dropped. They're getting dropped from the race, but they're still technically in front of me because they're a lap up, right? I'm a lap down because of that rule. Again, a free lap only applies for the first 95% of the race. You can't get a free lap. So let's talk about let's kind of go back to the business while I spin around for the last part of this race, being so mad. So $2,500 to close off the streets. You're going to need insurance. You're going to need porta potties. Those cost a bunch of money. It's bonkers, dude. You have to probably pay for police officers. Super expensive. So you might imagine that motorcycle ref, you have to have refs. That motorcycle ref right there is about $1,000. It's about $1,000 to have that ref and that motorcycle. And they make you do that. You have to do that. So 10 grand to put on this race? Maybe not so much. 5 grand. Five-ish, possibly. More like 5. $5,000 to put on this race, and you stand a chance to make that plus a little bit. But dude, putting on races, unless you're doing it all the time, like, you might make a little bit of money, but you might lose a lot of money. So I did my own race. I put on a race 2 years, and it was the cost to put on the race was as low as it could possibly be. And so I did make money, but for what I had to risk versus what I could have gained, it's difficult. So when you go to a race, man, just have some respect for someone is probably losing money, right? Unless it's like a really big, well put on race that has a ton of like experience, like clout, then cool. Maybe they're making money. But when you complain about like how much a race costs, for the most part, dude, they're barely making it. It's like a labor of love. So here's my teammate in front of me. This is Sean Remy, carb doping. He got dropped in the last couple laps because, dude, I can't even tell you how fast the laps are in the last. But I would have been able to hang in there. I was so ready for this race. So we're just kind of motoring around, and it's embarrassing because, like I told you in the very beginning, we got the call up. All three of our Michael David Winery teammates got a call up of like, these guys are special, and then we all are off the back riding around like, this is our race. This is the Michael David race, and we all sucked. We rode really well together though, and again, we got into a break for a little bit. So there you go. We've got about like one more lap, and then I just kind of shut it down, and then that was that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Spitballing by myself is cool. I'm going to do another one with Tony Wolf, all about training. Probably going to do get Chaz on here and do a race there, and I'm going to do. Right now I'm in off season, so it's like, not too many races going on. So I'm kind of using, these are like old races. Like, this race was from the summer, and so yeah. So all these guys right here, like, dude, what am I gonna do? Hang on the wheel? I'm a lap down because of getting a flat. So even if I finish in front of them, it doesn't matter. I'm the last to finish because of the flat. So I'm just kind of chatting and being bummed. What else? So I'm doing more of these. That's a thing. That's going to be cool. I'm going to show you real quick. Here's the finishing video. It's like kind of a bad video, but here's the finish of the win. Here's the guy winning the race. And the dude comes from so far back and just blows everyone out of the water. I wouldn't have been able to hang with him. But that's winning the race. And if you want to watch the whole day of this, peep out the Lodi Cyclefest. And yeah, so after this, I got done. I hung out a little bit and drove home. This race, most races for me are about a 3-hour drive, about 2 to 3 hour drive. So there it is, guys. Thank you so much. More to come on the RaceCast. Let me know if there's any other topics you want me to cover during these RaceCasts. And as always, guys, vegan cyclist. Yeah.
And Theobald and Pasca chasing the two-man getaway.